Hi, this is James Garden at CineTechGeek, and I'm here with Cedric from Eclair Color. Now, this trip, he's probably one of the most interesting fellows that I've come to meet, because you know how DCI has been going on about a new standard in terms of peak luminance and black levels in theatrical release in the future, and they're starting to talk about that. Well, Cedric, he's probably done more research in that area than anyone I have ever met, and most likely, it's one of the top in the world. So I thought I'd get him on and we'd have a quick little discussion about where Eclair Color is coming from and how that's most likely to affect what's going on with DCI and what will happen in our exhibition, in our theatres in the future. So just quickly, Cedric, tell us, what you do and how's that going to affect us in the future?
Well, I joined Ymagis 4 years ago, and at that time there were discussions about new premium formats. That was the early days of Dolby Cinema. Obviously, IMAX was the big player in that game. And especially in Europe, we didn't have many of those because they were considered to be way too expensive. And at Ymagis, we have exhibitor services, and we wanted to develop a solution that would be less expensive, but providing a great experience for people. I had a career in color science and post-production, so I knew I was already involved in the training around ACs, HDR at that time, and I was also close to some engineers from Barco and different providers in the industry. And at Ymagis we had engineers that were working on the projector technology, so we started to do some research on what would be the feasible technology to have a differentiated experience, but for reasonable price. So that's how we came with the very first version of Eclair Color, and that was almost 3 years ago now. We started this research, and we did show that in 2016 at Cine Europe.
Yep.
And since then it's been more than 100 movies that have been remastered with Eclair Color, 170 screens in the world, and we support Barco projectors, Sony projectors, and Samsung LED screens. So now it's an open project, and it's getting some very good traction.
Yes, just so we some of the things I want to paint a picture here. So, as you know, we're going to better quality pictures in theatrical. Now, there's lots of products coming out, experimental and current. Now, to go to a better quality picture in theatrical, we have to be able to afford to buy these projectors on a mass for the industry. Now, Eclair Color has probably done the most work on actually doing the tests to figure out what that path will be, and also it has given the projector manufacturers an incredible amount of direction and feedback in terms of what's acceptable from in the post-production side, and also a clear understanding of the maths and other areas where it's still quite. It's still a new area. Let's just talk about that for a bit. So I think that's probably one of the biggest contributions here, is defining a new path for production to actually to get from what we do today to what we need to do tomorrow. And so just talk about how Eclair Color has contributed there for a sec, because I think it's been very, very, very good, and I think it's been great work from Eclair Color there.
Well, thank you. There is something very important for us, is to get post-production into a path where they move to a color managed workflow.
Yeah.
So that makes it easier to go from one version to another.
That's right.
So we were really happy to work on the AC's workflow at Eclair. We've worked quite a lot to get more movies made in ACES, and because it's actually used as the foundation for the matching, so we can easily move from SDR to EDR to HDR, and that allows us to be able to move quickly and to remaster the content, because there is one creative intent. That is the most important thing. The question is, how do you translate that into a nice picture and in an easy way?
Yes, that's right. But one of the things I see from it too is that that path and methodology that you actually adopt actually has a big effect on the distribution side as well. And if you know anything about theatrical distribution and talking to the studios, their biggest concern is the cost of distribution. It's not cheap. Like a lot of talk this time, we went to some studios and they're talking about 500 different CPL versions or 500 different versions they have to QC in a very limited time, like 10 to 12 days. That is a mammoth job, and to apply a new grade and everything to that is it's not a small problem, is it? And so what we do on that side of the equation has a lot to do with what we're going to do on this side of the equation. And that's why when I talk about what DCI is putting out there, these ideas, it's to start the narrative and the discussions about how we're going to do this. Now, one of the reasons I'm bringing you here, because they started this discussion 3 years ago, and they're a little bit ahead of most of the other people here. So your input and discussions we've had during this trip have been very insightful. And, you know, if you're coming to NAB next week and you're interested in this, trap this guy for a few minutes. It's going to be very interesting discussions. But let's just go on there for a minute. I find your idea on the ideas behind your distribution very interesting too. So just dive into that a little bit of how you see theatrical distribution going based on your experience at this stage.
Well, the discussion we've had with the studio, we've had them for the last 3 years, really, and they say, no, not another version. You know,
yes,
that's
right.
really
that's
the way they put it.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons for that is that the cost to put another version is not only one version, but multiplied by the number of languages, the number of subtitle versions and all that. So obviously it makes a whole mess. So we worked on that topic to propose what we actually released 1 year ago at CinemaCon, the hybrid tone mapping, so that allows to put the SDR, EDR and HDR versions all together within the same DCP. So it's all based on current technology, so there is no special metadata or no special processing to be added inside the projector or the media block. It's all based on stuff that exists now, because we do believe we need a solution now. I mean, DCI is doing a great job at setting a standard for the future and considering what the future of cinema should be. But what happens is, now in the fields we have projectors that are 10 years old that need to be replaced, people with new projects, and they want to have a technology that they can rely on for next
they can move into years. Now, so the decisions they make now aren't going to, you know, I don't want to get to what I call the iPhone syndrome, where you don't want to, you buy the iPhone and it's just, should I wait for the next one? Should I wait for the next one? We need to have that's why I think the narrative and the discussion's happening pretty strong now. So that for example, there's some projectors coming out at the show today which clearly have this in mind and have upgrade paths to allow this to happen. And that's sort of happening because of the sort of work that has been done by Eclair Color. And I really want people to understand this. This is not a simple problem, and there are lots of discussions happening. There's lots of things happening. But we are moving forward, and the end of the rainbow is actually not out of sight at this stage, I'd say.
No, there will be a step-by-step process.
Yes.
Yeah. And we want to be one of those steps, because we believe if we want to have the real solution, it will take 2 or 3 iterations to get
true.
there,
It
with
always
probably
takes,
some changes in the way DCPs are made, the technology and everything. You know, JPEG 2000, 12-bit, XYZ, all those things have limitations in the way they are now.
Yep.
So we propose a first step that is using the same logistics as what we know today. So today, when you create an Eclair Color DCP, it's a SMT DCP. It's using current technology. There is no special processing. There is nothing. It's just color science on the grading side and color science on the projector side, and that's pure software. There's nothing special about it. One of the points also is to optimize the encoding, because one of the problems we see as well is if we put more information, obviously using the same non-dynamic type of encoding that JPEG 2000 is, you end up with bigger, larger DCPs.
That's right.
And at the same time, studios want to reduce the distribution, the cost of distribution. So then you end up with 2 DCPs, one that is the regular DCP, then a second one that is much larger. and at the same time they want to reduce the cost. So how can you
that's
achieve
right.
that? You know?
Yes.
So that's actually one of the. There are two problems to get technology adoption in a theater. One is to get the make the content. So for that you need to have in your creative process an easy access to that technology. So if the setup requires $1 million worth of gear, it will be very difficult to have that in your local post facility.
Yeah.
And the second is, once you're happy, you've created that super beautiful version and all that, you need to have the distribution people to agree on sending that to the theaters that are equipped. And if it's only for 2 screens in the world, you have a problem. And you know what? If the display technology in the fields is too expensive, only a fraction of exhibitors will be able to have it. And if you're in a multiplex, you will have only one room. And that means that you will see that movie for 1 week, you know, because there will be other movies.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes.
So in fact, you have a very, very, very small window to actually see your movie in the best version. So one of the points of having an affordable technology is also to have multiple rooms with different screen size, so that version can live a real movie live, being the big screen, the smaller screen for a couple of weeks.
That's right.
And all that's logistic. At some point, once you have that, then it makes more sense for the distributor to create that version.
That's right, yes.
You know?
And one of the things, and I spoke to you before about this, you've noticed if you've been following my blog over the years and my NAB coverage, a lot of the times I try and discuss how do we do some of these processes, like spending 30% the cost to get 80% the result. Now I find this is very, very important, because the thing about HDR is it's something you have to train and get experience in before you should actually get out there on the track. And to do that, if you have to buy $1 million projector to train, it's not going to happen much, is it? So there are ways and techniques and to actually buy things which aren't 100% there, but give you enough of the experience so you can refine your skills, right? And I'm hoping to do that at NAB this year, in terms of discuss with some people on some techniques we could use as burgeoning people who are looking at doing these theatrical high dynamic range grades in the future. You know, what sort of display to buy, how to use the display in terms of position, and to reproduce the environmental and emotional effect of a theatrical display, but not having $1 million theaterette to do it in. So there's a lot of parts to this puzzle, and maybe I might see you again at NAB, but definitely keep an eye on for videos that will go along those lines when I do the NAB coverage. But unfortunately, I think we need to rush off to another little presentation. There's lots of interesting things this year. So thank you very much, Cedric. And I'll see you next year, I hope, at some stage.
Certainly.
And anyway, that's James Gardner, the CineTechGeek, at CinemaCon 2019. Bye for now.